Imagine stepping into an old, creaky English manor on a foggy evening, where every shadow whispers secrets, and one wrong turn could unravel a deadly mystery. That's the chilling allure of Hawthorne House. Home to Miss Marple's latest puzzle? Chapter 1. The arrival at Hawthorne House, nestled in the misty countryside of rural England. Hawthorne House stood like a sentinel from a bygone era, its ivy-clad walls hiding tales of grandeur and gloom. It was the summer of 1935, and our sharp-eyed heroine, Miss Jane Marple, had received an unexpected invitation from her distant cousin, Lady Eleanor Hawthorne. The letter arrived on a crisp morning in St. Mary Mead, Miss Marple's quaint village, home, where she spent her days knitting by the window and observing the subtle dramas of everyday life. Dearest Jane, the letter began in Eleanor's elegant script. I fear something dreadful is afoot at Hawthorne House. Whispers echo in the hallways at night, and I sense eyes watching from the shadows. Please come at once, your keen insight is my only hope. Miss Marple, never one to ignore a cry for help, especially from family, packed her modest suitcase with a few woolen cardigans, her favorite knitting needles, and a small notebook for jotting down observations. She boarded the train to Devonshire, her mind already buzzing with possibilities. What could these whispers be? Ghosts from the past, or something more sinister, like a human scheming in the dark? As the train chugged through rolling hills dotted with sheep and ancient stone fences, Miss Marple reflected on her cousin's life. Lady Eleanor, a widow in her late 50s, had inherited Hawthorne House after her husband's untimely death in a hunting accident 5 years prior. The estate was vast, with sprawling gardens, a labyrinthine library, and hallways that seemed to stretch endlessly, lined with portraits of stern ancestors whose eyes followed you as you passed. Eleanor lived there with a small household. Her nephew, Reginald Hawthorne, a dashing but reckless young man in his 30s who dreamed of modernizing the estate into a luxury hotel. Her niece, Amelia, a beautiful artist in her 20s, known for her ethereal paintings and secretive nature. The loyal butler, Mr. Graves, who had served the family for decades and knew every creak in the floorboards. The housemaid, young Lily, bubbly but prone to gossip. And the gardener, old Mr. Thorne, whose gnarled hands tended the roses with a quiet intensity. There was also Dr. Harlan, the family physician, who visited often and seemed overly attentive to Eleanor's health. Miss Marple had met them all briefly at a family gathering years ago. But people change, she mused, and motives shift like the wind. The taxi from the station wound up the gravel drive, crunching under tires as Hawthorne House loomed into view. Twilight cast long shadows across the facade, and the air carried the scent of damp earth and blooming night jasmine. Lady Eleanor greeted Miss Marple at the grand oak door, her face pale and drawn under a veil of powdered makeup. "Jane, thank goodness you've come," she whispered, clutching Miss Marple's arm with trembling fingers. The whispers started a month ago, faint at first like wind through cracks, but now they form words. Warnings, I swear. And beware the air, they say, or secrets will bury you. It's always in the east hallway, the one leading to the old wing. Miss Marple patted her cousin's hand reassuringly. There, Eleanor. Whispers are often just echoes of the living, not the dead. Let's have a cup of tea, and you can tell me everything. They settled in the drawing room, a cozy space warmed by a crackling fire despite the summer evening. Velvet curtains framed tall windows overlooking the gardens, where fireflies began their dance. Eleanor poured tea from a silver pot, her hands steadying as she spoke. It began after Reginald announced his plans to sell part of the land for development. He says the house is crumbling, debts piling up. But Amelia opposes it. Fiercely, she claims the land holds family secrets, buried artifacts from our ancestors who were explorers. Then there's the will my late husband left everything to me. But upon my death, it splits between Reginald and Amelia, unless one proves unworthy. Lately I've felt unwell, dizzy spells, and Dr. Harlan prescribes tonics that leave me foggy. Miss Marple sipped her tea, her blue eyes twinkling with interest. And the staff? Any tensions? Eleanor nodded. Mr. Graves is devoted, but he's aging, forgets things. Lily chats endlessly about village rumors, says Thorne mutters about curses in the garden. And Harlan, He's kind, but his visits coincide with the whispers. That night, Miss Marple retired to a guest room in the east wing, its four-poster bed draped in faded brocade. The house settled with groans, and as midnight approached, she heard it the whispering. Soft, insidious, like silk rustling against stone. Slipping on her dressing gown, she crept into the hallway, candle in hand. The corridor was long and narrow, wallpaper peeling in places, portraits glaring down. The whispers grew. The bloodline ends here. Betrayal in the roots. Miss Marple paused, ears straining. It seemed to emanate from a grate near the floor, perhaps connected to old ventilation shafts. She noted the dust patterns disturbed recently, as if someone had knelt there. A floorboard creaked behind her, and she turned to see a shadow flit away. Was it imagination, or a real intruder? The next morning, over breakfast in the sunlit conservatory, Miss Marple observed the family. Reginald buttered his toast vigorously. Ranting about investors, Aunt Eleanor, we must modernize. This pile of stones is a money pit. Amelia, sketching idly, shot him a glare, and destroy our heritage. Father would roll in his grave. Mr. Grave served silently, but Miss Marple caught his hand tremble. Lily chattered about a missing silver spoon, while Thorne lurked outside, pruning hedges with sharp shears. Dr. Harlan arrived unannounced, checking Eleanor's pulse. Your nerves are frayed, my lady. More tonic.
Oh.
Miss Marple declined a cup, preferring to keep her wits sharp. As the day unfolded, Miss Marple wandered the grounds, chatting with Thorne. Beautiful roses, she said. He grunted. Aye, but thorns protect secrets. Old master buried things. Here letters, jewels, whispers. House talks to those who listen. Intrigued, she explored the library, shelves groaning with leather-bound tomes. A book on ventilation systems caught her eye. Hawthorne House had hidden passages for servants, some leading to grates and hallways. Could someone be using them to stage the whispers? That afternoon, Amelia showed Miss Marple her studio, canvases splashed with haunting scenes of misty halls. I paint what I hear, she confessed. The whispers inspire me, but terrify Aunt Eleanor. Reginald interrupted, arguing about finances, his face flushed. By evening, tension simmered at dinner. Eleanor looked frail, retiring early. Miss Marple lingered, knitting in the drawing room. Midnight brought the whispers again, louder. She followed the sound to the grate, prying it open with a poker. Inside, a narrow duct led downward, dust marked by footprints. Scrap of paper fluttered out. The air must fall. Heart pounding, Miss Marple pocketed it. Suddenly a scream echoed from Eleanor's room. Rushing upstairs, she found her cousin collapsed, whispering, poison, ... the tonic. Dr. Harlan was summoned, but Miss Marple's mind raced who benefits. From Eleanor's fear? Reginald, eager for inheritance? Amelia, hiding artistic madness? Or someone else? As the chapter closes on this first night of intrigue, the whispers of Hawthorne House hint at deeper deceptions. What lies in those hidden passages, and who orchestrates the terror? Stay tuned for Chapter 2, where Miss Marple delves into the family's buried secrets. Chapter 2. Unearthing the family's buried secrets with the dawn light filtering through heavy curtains. Miss Marple rose early, her mind sharp despite the night's disturbances. She slipped downstairs to the library, where dust motes danced in, sunbeams piercing the tall windows. The room smelled of aged paper and polished wood, shelves towering with volumes on history, exploration, and botany, remnants of the Hawthorne ancestors' adventurous past. Sir Reginald Hawthorne the Elder, Eleanor's great-grandfather, had been a famed explorer in the 1800s, trekking through jungles and deserts, amassing artifacts now scattered or lost. Miss Marple pulled down a leather-bound journal from the shelf, its pages yellowed and filled with faded ink sketches of exotic lands. Entries spoke of treasures brought back to England, hidden in the estate to evade taxes or rivals. The ruby of Bengal lies where roots entwine. One cryptic line read, hinting at concealed valuables in the gardens. Could this be what Amelia meant by family secrets in the land? Miss Marple tucked the journal under her arm, deciding to probe further. Breakfast was a subdued affair in the dining room, silver clinking against china as the family gathered. Reginald paced by the window, his brow furrowed over a telegram from investors, while Amelia sipped coffee, her eyes distant. Eleanor, recovering from her collapse, sat pale but composed, insisting it was mere exhaustion. Dr. Harlan had left a fresh bottle of tonic. But Miss Marple advised caution, suggesting a second opinion from the village doctor. As graves cleared plates, Miss Marple casually mentioned the journal. Fascinating reading about your forebears, Eleanor. Such adventures, did they ever bury anything here? Reginald snorted. Old myths to scare off thieves. If there were rubies, we'd have sold them by now to fix the roof. Amelia's cup clattered. Not myths, Reggie. Father believed in them. He dug in the rose garden once, found a locket with a portrait inside. Thorn entering with fresh flowers. Overheard and nodded gruffly. Eye ground holds memories. Disturbed earth invites trouble. Seizing the moment, Miss Marple suggested a walk in the gardens to clear the air. The paths wound through manicured lawns, bordered by hedges trimmed into fantastical shapes. Thorn led the way, his boots crunching gravel, tools slung over his shoulder. Been here 40 years, he grumbled. Seen Hawthorns come and go. Old Sir Reginald buried more than treasures, letters, scandals. A duel over a lady, they say. Blood on the family name. Miss Marple nodded encouragingly. And recently any digging? Thorn hesitated, glancing at the house. Miss Amelia sketches by the old oak at dusk, but Reginald surveyed the back fields for his hotel nonsense. Unearthed an old box last week. Rusted, empty, but he seemed pleased. As they reached the rose garden, vibrant blooms in reds and pinks, Miss Marple spotted disturbed soil near a thorny bush. Kneeling, she sifted dirt, uncovering a shard of porcelain, perhaps from a buried tea set. Curious, she murmured. Someone's been searching. Back inside, Miss Marple visited Amelia's studio, a sunlit attic filled with easels and paint pots. Canvases depicted swirling mists and shadowy figures, echoing the house's eerie aura. Your work captures the soul of this place, Miss Marple said, admiring a piece showing a hallway with ghostly whispers visualized as curling smoke. Amelia blushed, brushing stray hair from her face. The legends inspire me ancestors' ghosts guarding secrets. Father told stories of a cursed gem bringing misfortune to thieves. She pulled out a small chest from under a table, revealing faded letters tied with ribbon. These were his. Mentions a map to hidden vaults under the house. Pages are missing, stolen, perhaps. Miss Marple examined the papers, noting fresh ink smudges on one envelope. Recent handling? Your opposition to Reginald's plans, fear of disturbing these? Amelia nodded fiercely. Yes, and he's desperate for money, gambling debts from London clubs. If he finds anything valuable, he'll sell it all. Lunch brought everyone together in the conservatory, glass walls framing the greenery outside. Conversation turned to the estate's finances, Reginald arguing passionately for development. Could have tennis courts, a spa, bring in tourists. Eleanor wavered, but Miss Marple interjected mildly. Progress is fine, but at what cost, too? Heritage. As Lily served soup, she dropped a spoon, whispering to Miss Marple. Mr. Reginald's been out at night with a shovel, miss. Saw him from my window. Graves shushed her, but the seed was planted. After the meal, Miss Marple cornered Reginald in the billiard room, cues clicking as he practiced shots. Your aunt's health worries me, she said. These whispers could. They'd be a ploy to unsettle her. He laughed bitterly. If anyone's plotting, it's Amelia with her ghost tales or that doctor pushing pills. I need the inheritance to save this place. His cue slipped, revealing a bandage on his hand, fresh dirt under nails. Afternoon tea was interrupted by a discovery. Eleanor found a threatening note in her jewelry box. Scrawled in shaky script, "The past will claim you next." Panic ensued. Dr. Harlan, arriving to calm her with sedatives. Miss Marple inspected the note. Fibers matching paper from the library. Handwriting disguised, but the ink's fresh. She recalled the ventilation ducts from last night, perhaps connected to secret passages mentioned in the journal. Exploring the basement, accessed via a creaky door behind the pantry, she found cobweb-draped tunnels, footprints in the dust. Leading upward, climbing a narrow ladder, she emerged behind a panel in the east hallway near the grate. Voices carried through. Reginald and Harlan arguing in low tones. The tonic's working. She'll sign the papers soon, Harlan hissed. But the old bats nosing around. Miss Marple froze collusion. Evening fell with a storm brewing, thunder rumbling as dinner proceeded tensely. Amelia announced she'd found a torn map fragment in the attic, showing garden markers. We must protect it. Reginald eyed her suspiciously. After retiring, Miss Marple waited in the dark hallway, hearing footsteps. Following, she saw a figure slip into the library Thorne, rifling drawers. Confronting him quietly, he confessed, "Protecting the family? Old master entrusted me with hiding spots." Reginald's, after the ruby thinks it's real. But as lightning flashed, a crash echoed from the garden. Rushing out, they found a freshly dug hole. It's empty, save for a glove matching Reginald's bandage. Deeper into the night, Miss Marple pieced clues. Buried treasures fueling greed, notes and whispers to hasten Eleanor's demise. Harlan's tonics poisonous. Amelia's maps, genuine or forged. Reginald's debt's motive for murder. Thorne's loyalty, hiding something darker. As rain lashed windows, another whisper slithered through the grate. Dig deeper or join the roots. Miss Marple resolved to excavate truth, perhaps literally, wrapping up these revelations. The family's skeletons begin tumbling from closets, but greater dangers lurk in shadows. What peril awaits in the storm-tossed night? Join us in Chapter 3 for the midnight confrontation that shakes Hawthorne House to its foundations. Chapter 3. The midnight confrontation rain battered Hawthorne House. The storm's ferocity shaking the ancient windows as midnight approached. Miss Marple, undeterred by the howling wind, sat in her guest room, her knitting needles clicking rhythmically as she reviewed her notebook. The glove from the garden, the threatening note, and the overheard conversation between Reginald and Dr. Harlan pointed to a plot, but the pieces didn't fully align. The whispers deliberately staged through the ventilation ducts suggested. Someone wanted Eleanor frightened, perhaps to manipulate her decisions about the estate, but who stood to gain the most? And why now? Miss Marple slipped on her shawl, lit a candle, and ventured into the east hallway, determined to uncover the orchestrator of this sinister charade. The house groaned under the storm's assault, its timbers creaking like a ship at sea. The hallway was a tunnel of shadows, portraits looming like silent judges. Miss Marple knelt by the grate, her candle casting flickers on peeling wallpaper. She traced the duck's path with her fingers, noting its connection to the basement. Passages. A faint scuff on the floorboard caught her eye fresh mark, as if someone had passed recently. Tiptoeing toward the staircase, she heard muffled voices from the drawing room below. Creeping down, she pressed herself against the banister, listening. Amelia's voice, sharp and low, cut through the air. "You can't keep digging, Reggie. You'll destroy everything Father cared about." Reginald's reply was heated. "And you'd rather let this place rot. I'm saving us." A third voice, Graves, the butler, interjected calmly. "Enough, both of you. Lady Eleanor mustn't hear this." Miss Marple's pulse quickened. A family meeting at this hour? Slipping into the library to avoid detection, she scanned the shelves for more clues. A book on estate architecture revealed blueprints of hidden passages, confirming her suspicions about the duck's role in amplifying whispers. One map showed a sealed chamber beneath the rose garden, marked Vault of Sir Reginald. Could this be the ruby's hiding place? As she studied the plans, a floorboard creaked behind her. Spinning around, she saw Lily, the housemaid, clutching a duster, her face pale. "Oh, miss, I didn't mean to startle you. I was cleaning." "At midnight, in a storm?" Miss Marple's eyes narrowed. "Lily, dear, what's troubling you?" The girl fidgeted, then whispered, "I heard Mr. Reginald and Dr. Harlan in the cellar last night, moving crates. They didn't see me, but I'm scared they mentioned getting rid of someone." Miss Marple patted her arm. "Stay calm, Lily. Tell no one you spoke to me." Determined to confront the conspirators, Miss Marple descended to the cellar. The air, damp and heavy with mildew. Her candle illuminated cobwebs and stacked wine barrels, but fresh footprints led to a stone wall. Pressing it, she felt a click. A hidden door swung open, revealing a narrow tunnel. Heart pounding, she followed it, emerging in a small chamber lit by a single lantern. There stood Reginald and Dr. Harlan, hunched over a wooden crate, prying. It opened with a crowbar. Inside gleamed a collection of artifacts, gold coins, a jade figurine, and a velvet pouch. "The ruby's not here," Reginald growled. "Keep searching," Harlan urged. "If Eleanor dies before we find it, the estate's ours to sell." Miss Marple stepped forward, her voice steady. "Gentlemen, I believe you've been caught." Reginald whirled, crowbar raised, but Harlan grabbed his arm. "Don't be a fool, man." Miss Marple held her ground, candle unwavering. "Poisoning." Eleanor's tonic, staging whispers to terrify her. "Your scheme ends tonight. The police will hear of this." Reginald's face twisted. "You don't understand. The Det'sile'll lose everything," Harlan sneered. "She's bluffing. No proof." But Miss Marple smiled faintly. "The glove in the garden, the notes ink matching library paper, your voices in the ducks proof enough for a jury?" Before they could react, a scream pierced the air from above Amelia's voice, racing upstairs. Miss Marple found Amelia in the drawing room, clutching a torn canvas, tears streaming. "Someone destroyed my painting, the one of the whispering hallway." Behind her, Thorne stood, his shears dripping with paint. "Had to miss," he muttered. "It showed too much secrets best left buried." Eleanor appeared, trembling, in her nightgown. "What is happening in my house?" Miss Marple took charge, guiding everyone to sit. "Eleanor, your nephew and doctor planned to frighten you into an early grave, seeking treasures hidden here." "But Amelia Thorne, your actions raise questions too. Why destroy the painting?" Amelia sobbed. "It wasn't just art it mapped. The vault's entrance. I feared Reggie would find it." As thunder crashed, Miss Marple pieced the motives together. Reginald and Harlan's greed drove their plot. But Amelia's obsession with family lore and Thorne's loyalty to past Hawthorns suggested they too guarded secrets. The painting's destruction hinted at a deeper truth. Perhaps the ruby wasn't the prize, but a cover for something more personal. Miss Marple turned to Graves, silent in the corner. "Mr. Graves, you've served this family longest. What do you know of the vault?" His eyes darted away. "Only rumors, miss. Old Sir Reginald sealed it after a scandal, a child born out of wedlock, disowned, papers hidden to protect the name. A bastard heir. Could this be the whisper's true warning?" The confrontation ended with Reginald and Harlan confined to their rooms, pending the village constable's arrival at dawn. Miss Marple stayed awake, guarding Eleanor, her mind racing. The vault held answers, but opening it risked exposing a scandal that could shatter the family. As rain slowed to a drizzle, she sketched a plan, searched the garden at first light using Amelia's map fragment. But Thorne's cryptic words lingered. Secrets buried with roots could entangle them all. This stormy night of revelations has unmasked betrayals, but the heart of Hawthorne House's mystery remains locked away. What lies in the vault, and who else guards its truth? Join us in Chapter 4, where Miss Marple ventures into the earth to unearth the past. Chapter 4. Into the earth the storm had passed by dawn, leaving Hawthorne House cloaked in a damp mist that clung to the roses and draped the lawns in silver. Miss Marple, fortified by a strong cup of tea, stood in the rose garden, Amelia's map fragment in hand. The paper, brittle and stained, showed a crude sketch of the garden with an X near an ancient oak, its roots sprawling like gnarled fingers. The air was heavy with the scent of wet earth, and the silence felt expectant, as if the house itself watched her every move. With Eleanor resting under Lily's watchful eye, and Reginald and Dr. Harlan confined until the constable arrived, Miss Marple enlisted Amelia and Thorne to help uncover the vault's entrance. "We must move swiftly," she said, her tone calm but firm. "The truth lies below, and someone may still try to stop us." Thorne fetched a shovel, his weathered hands, gripping it with purpose, while Amelia hovered nervously, her artist's fingers twisting a paintbrush. "The oak's roots are deep," she said, pointing to the massive tree. "Father said the vault was hidden, where no one would dare dig." Thorne nodded, his eyes distant. "Old Master spoke of a door beneath the roots, sealed with iron. Said it guarded shame, not treasure." Miss Marple studied the ground, noting patches of disturbed soil, Someone had been here recently, perhaps Reginald's nighttime digging. She directed Thorn to start at the X, where the earth was looser. As he dug, the shovel struck something solid, a metallic clang echoing. Brushing away dirt, they revealed an iron trap door, rusted but intact, a heavy padlock gleaming with fresh scratches. "Someone's tried to open it," Miss Marple observed, her eyes narrowing. Amelia fetched a crowbar from the shed, and Thorn pried the lock, muscles straining until it snapped. The trapdoor groaned open, revealing a stone staircase descending into darkness. Miss Marple lit a lantern, its glow casting eerie shadows on moss-covered walls. "Stay close," she instructed, leading the way. The air grew colder as they descended, the scent of damp stone replacing the garden's freshness. The stairs ended in a low-ceilinged chamber, its walls carved with faded symbols compasses, ships, and cryptic runes from Sir Reginald's explorer. Dazed in the center stood a stone chest, its lid engraved with a hawthorn tree. Amelia gasped. "This is at the vault." But Miss Marple's attention was drawn to footprints in the dust, leading to a corner where a loose brick revealed a hidden alcove. Inside was a small tin box recently opened, containing a single letter sealed with red wax. She broke the seal, unfolding the paper. It was dated 1872, signed by Sir Reginald Hawthorne. "To my heirs it began, forgive the sins I bury. Here my daughter, born of love but not of marriage, was sent away to spare the family's shame. Her mother's name, Eliza Thorne, and proof of her birthright lie within this vault. Protect her legacy, or the house will curse you." Miss Marple glanced at Thorne, whose face tightened. "Lisa was my gratante," he admitted. "Family. Cast her out. I swore to guard her story." Amelia's eyes widened. A secret heir. "That's why Father was obsessed with the vault. He wanted to right the wrong." But Miss Marple frowned. The letter hinted at more documents proving inheritance, potentially disrupting Reginald's claim. As they opened the stone chest, they found not jewels, but a bundle of papers. Birth records, a locket with Eliza's portrait, and a will naming her descendants as partial heirs. Dust on the chest was undisturbed, meaning Reginald hadn't reached this far. But a faint noise, a scrape of stone, came from the tunnel. Miss Marple doused the lantern, pulling Amelia and Thorne into the shadows. Footsteps descended, slow and deliberate. A flashlight beam cut through the dark, revealing Graves, the butler, his face grim. "I knew you'd find it, Miss Marple," he said softly. "I tried to warn Eleanor with the whispers, to scare her into leaving before Reginald sold everything. Eliza was my kin. Too, I couldn't let her legacy be erased." Miss Marple stepped forward. "You staged the whispers? Through the ducks?" Graves nodded. "Old servant tricks. I wanted to protect the house, but I never meant harm." The revelation hung heavy, but another sound interrupted a creak from above. Rushing back up, they found Lily at the trapdoor, wide-eyed. "Harlan's gone." He broke out of his room. Panic spurred them to the house, where Eleanor stood in the hall, clutching a vial. "Harlan tried to force this on me, said it was for my heart." Miss Marple sniffed the tonic bitter almonds, a hint of cyanide. "He's desperate now," she said. A search revealed Harlan's coat missing, and hoof prints in the mud outside suggested he'd fled on horseback toward the village. Thorne saddled a horse to pursue, while Miss Marple phoned the constable. Urging haste, back in the drawing room, Eleanor read the letter, tears falling. "I never knew. A lost sister. We must find her descendants." Amelia clutched the locket, vowing to honor Eliza's memory through her art, but Miss Marple's mind lingered on Harlan's escape. A man desperate enough to poison wouldn't flee without a plan. She examined the vial's label, compounded locally, likely tampered with. A quick call to the village chemist confirmed Harlan's recent purchase of suspicious chemicals. "He's not done," Miss Marple murmured, her knitting needles pausing. As the sun climbed, casting golden light over the gardens, the vault's secrets reshaped the family's future. Graves confessed to minor sabotage, moving objects, planting notes to protect Eliza's legacy without violence. But Harlan's flight suggested a darker endgame. Miss Marple planned her next move. Track Harlan before he could cover his tracks or worse. Return to finish his work. The vault has yielded its truth, but danger gallops free in the Devonshire hills. What does Harlan plan? And can Miss Marple stop him? Join us in Chapter 5, where the chase beyond Hawthorne House unveils a deadly twist. Chapter 5. The chase beyond the house. The morning sun burned through the mist, casting long shadows across the Devonshire hills as Miss Marple stood at the edge of Hawthorne House's gravel drive. The hoofprints in the mud, sharp and fresh, led toward the village, confirming Dr. Harlan's desperate flight. The constable was en route, but time was slipping away.
Ow.
And Miss Marple knew a man cornered by his own schemes could turn dangerous. She gathered her shawl, her notebook tucked securely in her pocket, and turned to Thorne, who was tightening the straps on a sturdy mare. "Mr. Thorne, you know these paths better than anyone," she said, her voice steady. "Must find Harlan before he vanishes. Or worse." Amelia, clutching the locket from the vault, insisted on joining them, her face pale but determined. "If he's after Eliza's legacy, I want to face him." With Eleanor safe under Lily's care and Reginald still confined, Miss Marple agreed, and the trio set off, the mare's hooves pounding the earth. The trail wound through dew-soaked meadows, past hedgerows buzzing with early bees. Thorne, grim and silent, pointed out broken twigs and scuffed dirt, signs of Harlan's reckless gallop. "He's headed for the old mill," he grunted. "Lonely spot, good for hiding." Miss Marple nodded, recalling village gossip about the mill, a crumbling relic by the river, abandoned since a flood decades ago. Her mind raced. Harlan's cyanide-laced tonic suggested a man unafraid of murder. But his escape hinted at a larger plant, perhaps a buyer for the estate's artifacts or a final act of sabotage. As they crested a hill, the mill sagging, roof came into view, its water wheel still against the sluggish river. A horse, lathered and tethered, stood nearby Harlan's. They dismounted, tying their mare to a tree. Miss Marple motioned for silence, her eyes scanning the mill's broken windows. A faint clatter echoed from within, like glass on stone. Creeping closer, they peered through a gap in the rotting door. Harlan stood at a makeshift table, surrounded by vials and a small burner, mixing chemicals with frantic precision. A satchel lay open, stuffed with coins and trinkets from the seller's crate stolen during his escape. "He's making more poison," Amelia whispered, her voice trembling. Miss Marple's gaze fell on a map beside him, marked with a route to London. "Not just poison," she murmured. "He's planning to sell the artifacts and disappear." Thorne, gripping his shovel like a weapon, moved to charge, but Miss Marple held him back. "We need evidence, not a brawl." She noticed a ledger on the table, its pages open to names and figures, London dealers, sums for antiquities. Harlan's greed had deeper roots than she'd thought. Slipping around the mill, Miss Marple found a loose board, easing it open too. "Enter quietly." The air inside was thick with chemical fumes, and Harlan's muttering grew clear. Reginald's debts were the perfect cover. One more dose, and the estate's mine to broker? He hadn't noticed them yet, engrossed in his work. Miss Marple signaled Amelia to fetch the ledger while she distracted him. "Dr. Harlan!" she called, stepping into the light. He spun, vial in hand, eyes wild. "You!" he snarled. "Meddling spinster." Miss Marple smiled faintly. "Your tonic gave you a cyanide scent is unmistakable. And that ledger? It names your accomplices." Harlan lunged, but Thorne barreled in, pinning him against the wall. Amelia snatched the ledger, its pages listing a London syndicate eager to buy the Hawthorne artifacts, with Harlan as middleman. "You poisoned Eleanor for a cut," Miss Marple said, her voice cutting, and the whispers. "Your idea or Reginald's?" Harlan sneered, struggling. "Reginald's too weak. I used the ducts to scare her, make her sign over the estate. The ruby was a myth to keep them digging." As Thorne bound Harlan's wrists with rope, hoofbeats announced the constables. Arrival: a burly man with 2 deputies. Miss Marple handed over the ledger and vial, explaining the plot. Dr. Harlan conspired to poison Lady Eleanor, using her nephew's debts as leverage. These artifacts were to be sold illegally. Constable nodded, cuffing Harlan.
Who?
Cursed under his breath. But as they led him away, a shot rang out from the trees. Everyone ducked, Thorn shielding Amelia. A figure darted through the underbrush. Reed from his room, a hunting rifle in hand. He broke the lock, Lily's voice called, running from the path. I tried to stop him. Miss Marple's heart raced, but her mind stayed clear. He's protecting his stake, she said. Thorn, take Amelia back to the house. Constable, we must pursue. The chase veered into the woods, Reginald's footsteps heavy in the mud. Miss Marple, surprisingly spry, followed the constable, her lantern swinging. They found Reginald cornered at a stream, rifle empty, his face a mask of desperation. I just wanted the money, he sobbed, dropping the weapon. Harlan promised I'd keep the estate. The deputies seized him, and Miss Marple noted a letter in his posita contract with Harlan, promising half the artifact profits for his silence. Back at the mill, Amelia clutched the ledger, her eyes blazing. These belong to our family. To Eliza's memory? Miss Marple agreed, suggesting the artifacts be catalogued for a museum, honoring the Hawthorne legacy. As they rode back to the house, the constable promised a full investigation, with Harlan and Reginald facing charges. But Miss Marple's thoughts lingered on the letter from the vault. Eliza's descendants, possibly Thorns, could claim part of the estate, complicating Eleanor's will. And Graves' role in the whispers, though well-intentioned, raised questions about other secrets he might keep. Tip: when unraveling a mystery in your own life, gather evidence quietly before confronting suspects. A notebook like Miss Marple's can help track clues without alerting others. Small details often reveal the truth. The chase has ended, but the Hawthorne legacy teeters on new revelations. Who are Eliza's heirs, and what else hides in the house's shadows? Join us in Chapter 6, where Miss Marple faces a surprising visitor with ties to the past. Chapter 6. The visitor from the past. The afternoon sun-bathed Hawthorne House in a golden glow, softening its stern stone facade as Miss Marple sat in the drawing room, her knitting needles idle for once. The arrests of Dr. Harlan and Reginald had lifted a weight from the household, but the discovery of Eliza Thorne's legacy cast new shadows. Eleanor, now recovering with a clear mind, pored over the vault's documents, her hands trembling as she traced the locket's delicate engraving. Amelia sketched quietly, her pencil capturing Eliza's portrait, while Thorne and Lily bustled about, restoring order. Graves, though shaken by his role in the whispers, served tea with his usual dignity. Yet Miss Marple's thoughts churned. Eliza's descendants could append the estate's future, and Harlan's London syndicate might not abandon their prize so easily. A knock at the door broke her reverie, a firm, insistent rap that silenced the room. Graves opened the door to reveal a woman in her 40s, dressed in a modest tweed coat, her dark eyes sharp and searching. She carried a leather satchel, worn but meticulously maintained, and her posture spoke of resolve. I'm Clara Thorne, she announced, her voice steady with a faint Devonshire lilt.
Hi.
I've come about my family's claim to Hawthorne House. Eleanor gasped, the teacup rattling in her saucer. Miss Marple rose, her blue eyes twinkling with curiosity. Miss Thorne, please join us. Your arrival is timely. Clara stepped inside, her gaze sweeping the room, lingering on the locket in Eleanor's hand. That was my great-grandmother's, she said softly. Lisa Thorne. I've spent years tracing her story. Over tea, Clara explained her presence. A librarian from Exeter, she'd uncovered records of Eliza's banishment after a chance find in a parish archive, a baptism certificate naming Eliza as Sir Reginald's daughter, born to a seamstress in 1848, Clara's research led her to letters hidden in a village church, detailing Eliza's exile to Canada, where she raised a family under a new name. I'm her great-granddaughter, Clara said, producing faded photographs and a family tree meticulously inked. When I read of strange happenings, here whispers, threats, I knew it was time to claim what's ours. Amelia's pencil. Stilled? You mean the estate? Clara nodded. A share, at least. The will in the vault grants Eliza's line inheritance rights. Miss Marple examined the documents, her fingers tracing the faded signatures. The papers were authentic, countersigned by a solicitor long dead. This changes everything, she murmured. Eleanor, pale but composed, invited Clara to stay, eager to learn more. "If you're family, you're welcome," she said. But Thorne, hovering by the door, frowned. "No offense, miss, but we've had enough surprises. How do we know you're not after the artifacts, like Harlan?" Clara's eyes flashed. "I want justice, not gold." Eliza's name was erased. My family lived in poverty while Hawthorne's thrived. Her words hung heavy, and Miss Marple noted the tension in Graves' stance. Did he fear Clara's claim threatened his own connection to Eliza? To ease the mood, Miss Marple suggested a tour of the estate, hoping to gauge Clara's intentions. They walked the gardens, Clara pausing at the ancient oak where the vault lay hidden. "My mother told stories of a ruby," she said, almost wistfully. "A fairy tale," I thought, until I found Sir Reginald's journals in an Exeter library. He wrote of guilt, hiding Eliza's proof to protect his reputation. Amelia, clutching her sketchbook, pointed to the rose garden. "That's where we found the vault. Your heritage is safe now." But Miss Marple noticed Clara's satchel, bulging slightly more documents, or something else. As they passed the library, Clara's eyes lingered on the shelves, as if searching for something specific. Dinner was a strained affair, the chandelier casting flickering light over the table. Clara spoke of her life modest, scholarly, driven by a quest to restore her family's honor. Eleanor listened, moved, but Amelia's questions were sharp. "Why now? You could have come years ago." Clara smiled tightly. "I needed proof, and the rumors of trouble here spurred me. Someone's been writing to London dealers, stirring interest in Hawthorne artifacts." Miss Marple's ears pricked up. "You know of the syndicate?" Clara nodded, pulling a letter from her satchel, warning from a dealer, hinting at a local accomplice still at large. "Harlan wasn't working alone," she said. "Someone in this house fed him information." The accusation sparked unease. Graves dropped a spoon, his face ashen, while Thorne excused himself abruptly, muttering, "About checking the stables." Miss Marple's mind raced. A third conspirator? She recalled Lily's nervous whispers about overheard conversations, and Graves' access to every room. After dinner, she cornered Lily in the pantry. "You mentioned Harlan and Reginald talking in the cellar. Anyone else?" Lily hesitated, then whispered, "I saw Mr. Graves with a letter once, addressed to London. I thought it was household business." Miss Marple thanked her, her suspicions deepening. Graves' loyalty to Eliza's memory might hide a darker motive, profit perhaps, or revenge. Late that night, Miss Marple crept to the library where Clara had lingered. A book on local history lay open, pages marked with notes in fresh ink. Tucked inside was a photograph of a young Graves with a woman resembling Eliza's mother. Perhaps, before she could investigate, a floorboard creaked. Clara stood in the doorway, her satchel open. "I couldn't sleep," she said too quickly. "Just checking the journals." Miss Marple smiled. "Of course, but let's be open with each other, dear." "What else are you seeking?" Clara hesitated, then pulled out a small key. "It's for a box Eliza left a final clue to her legacy. I think it's here, hidden." As they spoke, a distant crash echoed from the stable's Thorne's domain. Rushing outside, they found Thorne wrestling with a cloaked figure, a knife glinting in the moonlight. The figure fled, but Thorne held a torn scrap of Fabrica London tailor's mark. "Tried to burn the stables," he panted. Smelled of Harlan's chemicals. Miss Marple's heart sank. The syndicate wasn't done, and someone inside was still pulling strings. Clara's arrival had stirred the hornet's nest, but was she hunter or prey? Clara's claim has ignited old wounds, and a shadow lingers over Hawthorne House. Who is the syndicate's insider? And what does Clara's key unlock? Join us in Chapter 7, where Miss Marple uncovers a hidden box and a betrayal closer to home. Chapter 7. The Hidden Box. The moon hung low over Hawthorne's house, its pale light filtering through the mist as Miss Marple stood in the stable yard, clutching the torn fabric with the London tailor's mark. The attempted arson had rattled the household, and Clara's sudden arrival with her claim to Eliza's legacy only deepened the unease. Thorne, still catching his breath from the scuffle, insisted the cloaked figure was no local too nimble, too well-dressed for a village thug. Miss Marple's mind turned to the syndicate Clara mentioned, a shadowy group circling the estate's artifacts. The key Clara carried, small and ornate, hinted at a final piece of Eliza's puzzle, but its purpose remained elusive. With the constable's men patrolling the grounds, Miss Marple gathered Clara, Amelia, and Thorne in the library, determined to find the box it unlocked before the syndicate struck again. The library shelves loomed like silent guardians. Shadows dancing in the lamplight, Clara held the key tightly, her eyes scanning the rows of books. "My mother said Eliza hid a box here, one only her blood could claim," she explained. "It holds proof of her rights letters, perhaps, or a deed." Miss Marple nodded, her gaze settling on the photograph she'd found earlier, showing a young Graves with a woman resembling Eliza. "We must search methodically," she said, directing Amelia to check the upper shelves while Thorne inspected the lower ones. She herself examined a carved oak panel near the fireplace, its hawthorn motif matching the vault's chest. Pressing it, she felt a hidden drawer slid open, revealing a small, locked box, its brass fittings gleaming. Clara's breath caught. That's it. The key fit perfectly, turning with a soft click. Inside lay a bundle of letters, a miniature portrait of a young Eliza, and a folded parchmentia legal document naming Elisa as Sir Reginald's heir, entitled to a third of the estate. But one letter, in fresher ink, stood out, addressed to a London solicitor. "If you're reading this," it read, "my legacy is at risk. Guard the truth, for the house whispers its vengeance." The signature was Eliza's, but the date was recent, 1925, long after her death. Miss Marple's eyes narrowed. A forgery, or someone claiming Eliza's voice. Clara paled. "My mother died that year she spoke of protecting the family." "Name, but I never saw this," Thorne grunted. "Sounds like someone stirring trouble, keeping the old wound open." Amelia, rifling through a nearby shelf, gasped, pulling out a ledger hidden behind a row of novels. Its pages listed recent. Sales of minor artifacts, candlesticks, a jade brooch sent to London, with Graves' initials scrawled beside each entry. "Mr. Graves?" Amelia whispered, shocked. "He's been with us forever?" Miss Marple's mind raced. Graves' connection to Eliza, his whispers through the ducts. Now this ledger suggested he'd played a double game protecting her legacy while selling off pieces to fund. What? She recalled his nervous demeanor at Clara's accusation of a syndicate insider. "We must speak with him," she said, tucking the ledger under her arm. They found Graves in the pantry, polishing silver with trembling hands. Confronted with the ledger, he slumped, his face ashen. "I sold trinkets to keep the house running," he confessed. "Lady Eleanor's funds were short and Reginald's debts drained us. Sent letters to dealers hoping to scare off the syndicate by hinting at Eliza's claim." Miss Marple frowned. "And the forged letter? Did you write it to bolster Clara's arrival?" Graves shook his head. "No, miss. I found it in the library last year, left by someone, maybe Harlan, to stir chaos." His eyes met Clara's. "I'm kin to Eliza too, but I never meant betrayal. Wanted her name honored." The confession was interrupted by a shout from Lily, who burst in, breathless. "There's smoke in the east wing." "I saw a shadow near the hallway." Rushing upstairs, they found a smoldering rag stuffed in the grate, the same one used for the whispers. The fire was small, quickly doused, but the message was clear. The syndicate's reach extended inside. Miss Marple examined the rag, noting a faint chemical scent, like Harlan's vials. "Someone local is helping them," she said. "Graves, you've been careless, but I believe you're not the arsonist." His relief was palpable, but Clara's gaze hardened. "Then who?" "That fabric from the stables, it's no coincidence." To test a theory, Miss Marple proposed a trap. She had Lily spread a rumor in the village that the vault's artifacts were being moved to the church for safekeeping. "If the syndicate bites, they'll show themselves," she explained. That night, she and Thorne hid in the churchyard, watching the shadows. At midnight, a cloaked figure crept toward the church, carrying a satchel. Thorne tackled them, revealing a young man not local, but wearing a London-tailored coat. Hired by the syndicate, he spat, caught, told to burn the evidence. He carried a letter, addressed to an unknown contact at Hawthorne House. detailing plans to steal the vault's contents once Eleanor was out of the way. Back at the house, Miss Marple studied the letter. The handwriting matched none in the household, but its tone echoed the forged Eliza note, calculated, manipulative. Clara, shaken, offered to help search for the syndicate's contact. "I've tracked dealers before," she said. "I know their tricks." Miss Marple agreed, but her instincts warned her. Clara's key, her timely arrival, her knowledge. Of the syndicate to perfect, perhaps? Yet the box's contents were genuine, and her grief over Eliza seemed real. Tip: when facing a complex problem, lay out all evidence like pieces of a puzzle. A single inconsistency, like a forged letter's date, can reveal the bigger picture. Keep a clear head, and don't rush to trust. The box has unveiled truths, but the syndicate's shadow looms closer. Who is their inside ally, and can Clara be trusted? Join us in Chapter 8, where Miss Marple sets a final trap to unmask the traitor within. Chapter 8. The final trap. The dawn light crept through the heavy curtains of Hawthorne House, casting a soft glow over the drawing room where Miss Marple sat, her notebook open on her lap. The discovery of the hidden box in Graves' confession had clarified some threads of the mystery, but the syndicate's persistent threat loomed large. The captured arsonist's letter, with its vague reference to an inside contact, gnawed at her. Clara's key and her timely arrival still raised questions, and the forged letter from Eliza suggested someone had orchestrated chaos to mask their true aim. With the constable's men guarding the estate, and Eleanor now fully aware of the plots against her, Miss Marple devised a plan to flesh out the traitor. "We'll stage a bait," she murmured to herself, "and let the shadows reveal themselves." She gathered the household: Eleanor, Amelia, Clara, Thorne, Graves, and Lillian, the library, where the air still carried the faint scent of old books and last night's tension. "We've uncovered much," Miss Marple began, her voice calm but commanding attention. "But someone in this house is still feeding information to the London syndicate. I propose we announce that the vault's artifacts, especially the supposed ruby, are being moved to a bank in Exeter tomorrow. The news will spread, and our traitor will act." Eleanor nodded, her face resolute. "Do what you must, Jane. I trust you."
"Ow."
Clara's eyes flickered, but she agreed, while Graves shifted. Uncomfortably, his hands clasped tightly. Thorne grunted approval, and Amelia clutched her sketchbook. Sketching nervously, Miss Marple instructed Lily to accidentally mention the transfer in the village pub, a hub of gossip.
Right.
By noon, the rumor was circulating, and Miss Marple positioned herself in the east hallway, near the grate where the whispers originated. She'd rigged a small bell inside the ventilation duct, a trick to detect anyone using it. As evening fell, the house grew quiet, the household retiring early under the pretense of exhaustion. Miss Marple, however, waited in the shadows, her candle unlit, ears straining. At midnight, the bell tinkled softly, followed by a faint rustle in the duct. She crept to the basement entrance, where the passage led to the grate, and spotted a figure crouched, whispering into the vent. "The ruby's moving tomorrow, Bank Vault, Exeter." The voice was low, feminine, and unmistakably Amelia's. Heart sinking, Miss Marple stepped forward. "Amelia, dear, what are you doing?" Amelia gasped, dropping a small recorder, a modern device for amplifying her whispers. I didn't mean harm," she stammered, tears welling. "I wanted to scare Reginald and Harlan off, protect the estate. I used the ducks, like Graves, to keep the ruby myth alive." Miss Marple's gaze softened but remained sharp at the letter to London. Amelia shook her head frantically. "That wasn't me. Found the forged Eliza letter in the library. Thought it was Harlan's doing. I only whispered to keep Aunt Eleanor cautious, to stop the sale." Her sketchbook fell open, revealing drawings of the vault's entrance, not as art, but as a map for her own searches. Before Miss Marple could press further, a crash echoed from the garden. Thorne burst in, shouting, "Another fire near the oak." They rushed outside, finding a small blaze at the vault's entrance, quickly extinguished by the constable's men. A satchel lay nearby, filled with matches and a note: "Burn the vault, take the ruby." The handwriting matched the syndicate's letter, but but a smudge of paint vermilion, Amelia's favorite, stained the edge. Miss Marple turned to her. "You've been reckless, dear. Did you contact anyone outside?" Amelia sobbed. "I wrote to a dealer anonymously to scare them off with fake ruby rumors. I didn't know they'd send men." Clara, who joined them, clutched her satchel, her face pale. "Amelia, you nearly destroyed everything. My family's proof could have burned." But Miss Marple noticed Clara's hand tremble, her satchel slightly open, revealing a glint of metal, a second key. "Clara," she said gently, "you've been forthright, but that key, what else does it open?" Clara hesitated, then confessed. "It's for a safe in Exeter, where I stored copies of Eliza's documents. I didn't trust the house, not with all this." Her honesty rang true, but Miss Marple filed it away. Clara's caution bordered on secrecy. The constable arrived, taking Amelia's recorder and the syndicate's note as evidence. She wasn't arrested. Her actions, though foolish, stemmed from loyalty, but the constable warned her to cooperate fully. Miss Marple pieced it together. Amelia's whispers and letters, meant to protect, had inadvertently fueled the syndicate's greed, drawing their agents to the estate. Graves' trinket sales had tipped them off initially, but Amelia's maps and rumors escalated the threat. Yet the forged Eliza letter, dated 1925, remained unexplained. Someone else had planted it, perhaps to incite Clara's claim. As the household gathered in the drawing room, Eleanor declared her intent to honor Eliza's legacy, offering Clara a share of the estate. "We'll find your kin," she promised. But Miss Marple's thoughts lingered on the syndicate's persistence. A final piece was missing: a mastermind beyond Harlan, someone who knew the house's secrets intimately. She glanced at Graves, whose loyalty masked a lifetime of access to every room, every letter. The trap has snared Amelia's missteps, but a deeper betrayal festers. Who planted the forged letter, and what drives the syndicate's relentless pursuit? Join us in Chapter 9, where Miss Marple uncovers the mastermind's identity. Chapter 9. The Mastermind Unmasked. The morning air in Hawthorne House carried a crisp edge, the kind that sharpened the senses and hinted at truths waiting to be uncovered. Miss Marple sat in the conservatory, sunlight streaming through glass panes, her knitting needles clicking softly as she reviewed her notebook. Amelia's reckless whispers and Graves' trinket sales had unraveled part of the syndicate's scheme, but the forged letter from Elisa, dated 1925, pointed to a deeper orchestrator, someone with intimate knowledge of the house and its secrets. Clara's claim, though genuine, had stirred the pot, and the syndicate's persistent attacks suggested a mastermind still at work, manipulating from within. With the constable's men stationed outside and Eleanor preparing to amend her will to include Eliza's descendants, Miss Marple knew the final confrontation loomed. She needed to unmask the traitor before they struck again. She began the day by revisiting the library, where the forged letter had been found. The shelves, heavy with history, held more than books. They guarded the house's pulse. Miss Marple traced the hawthorn carved panel where the hidden box had been, her fingers pausing on a faint scratch, fresh and deliberate. Someone had searched here recently, perhaps after Clara's arrival. She recalled the photograph of a young Graves with a woman resembling Eliza. In his confession about selling artifacts to protect the estate, his access to every corner of the house made him a prime suspect, yet his loyalty to Eliza's memory seemed sincere. Could he have played both sides, or was another hand guiding the chaos? At breakfast, the household gathered, tension simmering beneath polite chatter. Eleanor spoke of contacting a solicitor to verify Clara's claim, while Amelia sketched quietly, her eyes red from last night's tears. Clara sipped tea, her satchel close, the second key now explained, but her intensity undimmed. Thorne, polishing a knife at the table's edge, muttered about checking the grounds for more intruders. Graves served silently, but Miss Marple caught his glance toward a small silver box on the sideboard, a family heirloom, engraved with the same hawthorn motif. "Mr. Graves," she said casually, "that box, is it new?" He flinched, then recovered. "Old miss, but recently polished. Lady Eleanor asked for it displayed." His voice was steady, but his hands betrayed a tremor. Miss Marple's plan took shape. A controlled test, to draw out the mastermind. She announced to the household that the forged Eliza letter had been sent to a handwriting expert in Exeter. Expecting results by evening? It may reveal who's been stirring the syndicate, she said, watching faces. Clara nodded, Thorne grunted, but Graves' teapot rattled slightly. After breakfast, she slipped into the butler's pantry, where Graves kept records. A locked drawer yielded to a hairpin inside. She found a bundle of letters, not in Graves' hand, but addressed to him from a London contact named Mr. Black. They detailed payments for information on Hawthorne artifacts, with instructions to keep the ruby myth alive. The handwriting matched the forged Elisa letter, and one note mentioned a final payment if the estate changed hands. Heart pounding, Miss Marple confronted Graves in the garden, away from prying ears. "You've been feeding the syndicate," she said, holding up the letters. "You sold trinkets, yes, but also secrets, using Eliza's name to incite chaos." Graves' face crumpled, his shoulders sagging. "I had no choice, miss. My sister Lisa's granddaughter was ill, debts mounting. Mr. Black promised funds if I kept the ruby story alive. Drew buyers. I never meant for poison or fires." His voice broke. "I wrote the 1925 letter to scare Eleanor into protecting the estate, not selling it. I thought it would honor Eliza." Miss Marple's gaze softened, but her resolve held. "You endangered lives, Mr. Graves. The constable must know." Before she could act, a scream rang out from the house Lily's voice. Rushing inside, they found her in the east hallway, clutching a bloodied cloth. "It's Lady Eleanor. She's hurt." In the drawing room, Eleanor lay slumped, a shallow cut on her arm. A shattered vial beside her, cyanide's faint almond scent lingering. Clara knelt, applying a bandage, while Amelia sobbed. "I found her like this," Lily stammered. Miss Marple examined the vial identical to Harlan's, but fresh. "Someone retrieved his stock," she said. A quick search revealed a hidden cache in the cellar, behind wine barrels, with a note in Mr. Black's hand. "Finish it tonight." The constable arrived, taking Graves into custody for questioning. His confession poured out. He'd met Mr. Black years ago, a dealer exploiting his loyalty to Elisa. The syndicate had used Harlan and Reginald as pawns. But Graves' letters kept them hooked, promising a ruby that never existed. On Eleanor, though, puzzled Miss Marple, Graves was with her in the garden. She questioned Lily, whose nervous glances betrayed fear. "I saw a shadow," Lily whispered. "Not Graves. Someone slimmer, near the cellar." Miss Marple's eyes fell on Clara's satchel, always close, but Clara had been bandaging Eleanor. Amelia, though, had been alone before the scream. Testing a hunch, Miss Marple asked Amelia to show her latest sketch. It depicted a figure in the hallway, cloaked, holding a vial. "I saw it in my mind," Amelia said, trembling. "After last night I feared more attacks." But the figure's cloak matched the London tailor's fabric from the stables. "Amelia," Miss Marple said gently, "you've been protecting the estate, but did you take Harlan's vials to frame Graves?" Amelia collapsed, confessing. "I found the cache. Thought if Eleanor seemed attacked, Graves would be blamed, stopping the sale. I didn't mean to hurt her, just a scratch." Her desperation had spiraled. Feeding the syndicate's chaos, the mastermind's web. Graves and Amelia, entangled by loyalty and fear, has unraveled. But Eleanor's safety hangs in the balance. What final secrets will seal the Hawthorne legacy? Join us in Chapter 10, where Miss Marple brings peace to the house. Chapter 10. Peace over Hawthorne House. The late afternoon sun bathed Hawthorne House in a serene glow, its golden rays softening the edges of the ancient stone walls. Miss Marple stood in the rose garden, her shawl draped over her shoulders, her notebook now filled with the tangled threads of the mystery, finally woven into clarity. The Unmasked. Chapter 9. The mastermind unmasked. The morning air in Hawthorne House carried a crisp edge, the kind that sharpened the senses and hinted at truths waiting to be uncovered. Miss Marple sat in the conservatory, sunlight streaming through glass panes, her knitting needles clicking softly as she reviewed her notebook. Amelia's reckless whispers and Graves' trinket sales had unraveled part of the syndicate's scheme, but the forged letter from Eliza, dated 1925, pointed to a deeper orchestrator, someone with intimate knowledge of the house and its secrets. Clara's claim, though genuine, had stirred the pot, and the syndicate's persistent attack suggested a mastermind still at work, manipulating from within. With the constable's men stationed outside and Eleanor preparing to amend her will to include Eliza's descendants, Miss Marple knew the final confrontation loomed. She needed to unmask the traitor before they struck again. She began the day by revisiting the library, where the forged letter had been found. The shelves, heavy with history, held more than books. They guarded the house's pulse. Miss Marple traced the Hawthorne carved panel where the hidden box had been, her fingers pausing on a faint scratch, fresh and deliberate. Someone had searched here recently, perhaps after Clara's arrival. She recalled the photograph of a young Graves with a woman resembling Eliza, and his confession about selling artifacts to protect the estate. His access to every corner of the house made him a prime suspect, yet his loyalty to Eliza's memory seemed sincere. Could he have played both sides, or was another hand guiding the chaos? At breakfast, the household gathered, tension simmering beneath polite chatter. Eleanor spoke of contacting a solicitor to verify Clara's claim, while Amelia sketched quietly, her eyes red from last night's tears. Clara sipped tea, her satchel close. The second key now explained, but her intensity undimmed. Thorne, polishing a knife at the table's edge, muttered about checking the grounds for more intruders. Graves served silently, but Miss Marple caught his glance toward a small silver box on the sideboard, a family heirloom, engraved with the same Hawthorne motif. "Mr. Graves," she said casually, "that box isn't new?" He flinched then. "Recovered. Old miss, but recently polished." Lady Eleanor asked for it displayed. His voice was steady, but his hands betrayed a tremor. Miss Marple's plan took shape, a controlled test to draw out the mastermind. She announced to the household that the forged Eliza letter had been sent to a handwriting expert in Exeter. "Expecting results by evening. It may reveal who's been stirring the syndicate," she said, watching faces. Clara nodded. Thorne grunted, but Graves' teapot rattled slightly. After breakfast, she slipped into the butler's pantry, where Graves kept records. A locked drawer yielded to a hairpin inside. She found a bundle of letters, not in Graves' hand, but addressed to him, from a London contact named Mr. Black. They detailed payments for information on Hawthorne artifacts, with instructions to keep the ruby myth alive. The handwriting matched the forged Eliza letter, and one note mentioned a final payment if the estate changed hands. Heart pounding. Miss Marple confronted Graves in the garden, away from prying ears. "You've been feeding the syndicate," she said, holding up the letters. "You sold trinkets, yes, but also secrets, using Eliza's name to incite chaos." Graves' face crumpled, his shoulders sagging. "I had no choice, miss. My sister Eliza's granddaughter was ill, debts mounting. Mr. Black promised funds if I kept the ruby story alive, drew buyers. I never meant for poison or fires." His voice broke. "I wrote the 1925 letter to scare Eleanor into protecting the estate, not selling it. I thought it would honor Eliza." Miss Marple's gaze softened, but her resolve held. "You endangered lives, Mr. Graves. The constable must know." Before she could act, a scream rang out from the house Lily's voice. Rushing inside, they found her in the east hallway, clutching a bloodied cloth. "It's Lady Eleanor, she's hurt." In the drawing room, Eleanor lay slumped, a shallow cut on her arm, a shattered vial beside her, cyanide's faint almond scent, lingering. Clara knelt, applying a bandage, while Amelia sobbed. "I found her like this," Lily stammered. Miss Marple examined the vial, identical to Harlan's, but fresh. "Someone retrieved his stock," she said. A quick search revealed a hidden cache in the cellar, behind wine barrels, with a note in Mr. Black's hand, "Finish it tonight." The constable arrived, taking Graves into custody for questioning. His confession poured out. He'd met Mr. Black years ago, a dealer exploiting his loyalty to Eliza. The syndicate had used Harlan and Reginald as pawns, but Graves' letters kept them hooked, promising a ruby that never existed. The attack on Eleanor, though, puzzled Miss Marple. Graves was with her in the garden. She questioned Lily, whose nervous glances betrayed fear. "I saw a shadow," Lily whispered. "Not Graves, someone slimmer, near the cellar." Miss Marple's eyes fell on Clara's satchel, always close, but Clara had been bandaging Eleanor. Amelia, though, had been alone before the scream. Testing a hunch, Miss Marple asked Amelia to show her latest sketch. It depicted a figure in the hallway, cloaked, holding a vial. "I saw it in my mind," Amelia said, trembling. "After last night, I feared more attacks." But the figure's cloak matched the London tailor's fabric from the stables. "Amelia," Miss Marple said gently, "you've been protecting the estate, but did you take Harlan's vials to frame Graves?" Amelia collapsed, confessing. "I found the cash. Thought if Eleanor seemed attacked, Graves would be blamed, stopping the sale. I didn't mean to hurt her, just a scratch." Her desperation had spiraled, feeding the syndicate's chaos. The masterminds Webgraves and Amelia, entangled by loyalty and fear, has unraveled. But Eleanor's safety hangs in the balance. What final secrets will seal the Hawthorne legacy? Join us in Chapter 10, where Miss Marple brings peace to the house. Ing of Graves as the syndicate's informant and Amelia's desperate act to frame him had exposed the heart of the deception. The house still hummed with the weight of its past. Eleanor, recovering from her minor wound, had called a solicitor to formalize Clara's claim as Eliza's heir, determined to right old wrongs. Yet one question lingered in Miss Marple's mind. Could the syndicate's reach be fully severed? And would Hawthorne House find lasting peace? With the constable's men securing the estate and the household gathered for a final reckoning, she prepared to tie up the last loose ends.